Greetings and welcome. As you come on in, please type a 15 in the chat box or shoot some emojis. Let me know that you can see me and hear me. It's always nice to know that I'm talking to more than the camera. Last week we had our fair share of technical challenges and could not broadcast. Still not sure exactly what happened, but I am really grateful to have the opportunity to connect with you here together today. Just in case you don't know, my name is Stephen Pollitt, and I am the creator of Source Energy Medicine. And I have been sharing Source Energy Medicine since 2005, late 2004. 2005 is when I started sharing it with the public. And Lordy knows where all this time has gone. But I'm really, really excited to have the chance to connect with you today on SEM Mondays, my weekly live open Q&A show, and as a way to continue to support you during this intense health crisis, which doesn't seem like it's there's so many different stories, but it seems like we're going to be living with COVID-19 for quite some time. So as a way to continue to support you, I am going to continue to offer group energy healing sessions open to all. They're free as part of my SEM Mondays show. And if you don't already know, there's an aspect of Source Energy Medicine that is an energy healing modality. It's called the non-material aspect of Source Energy Medicine, but it's completely safe. It is the fastest, easiest, most direct way for you to experience Source Energy Medicine and for me to be able to share it with you. So I'm going to continue doing the group energy healing sessions likely for the next few months. And I think it's important for you to know, if you are watching this in replay, the energy healing sessions can be equally effective whether you're live or watching them in replay. And I have been accepting healing requests. You can type something into the chat box, but as YouTube warns you, this is a public platform, right? So just be careful, be sensitive about what you type into the chat. And so the first part of our time together today is going to be open Q&A. I have some questions that have come in through various means that questions make their way to me, and I'll do my best to bounce back and forth between those questions and questions with folks who are live. If you are watching this in replay, you can always leave your questions in the chat box, and I do my best to answer as many questions as possible. Thank you all for the kind words and emojis, and awesome to know that it is working this week. So frustrating. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into more than me putting on my white shirt and standing here and turning on the camera. And last week it was really, really, really frustrating. So part of the conversation that we're going to have today in the first segment is around blood sugar issues. There's, diabetes is in epidemic proportions these days, and the number of people who are being diagnosed as pre-diabetics are just skyrocketing. So there's a lot to talk about in regards to that, but for the conversation today, not going to talk so much about not going to talk at all about the approach of using Source Energy Medicine to be able to transform, balance, and restore blood sugar issues. But this kind of goes beyond, because I find that there are a lot of folks that don't really understand Source Energy Medicine to the fullest extent. And certainly in our online workshops, we talk about very specific approaches to helping regardless of what the challenge is. And, just in case you are new to Source Energy Medicine, I think it's important for you to know that there, from my perspective, which is based on my experience since 2005, there is nothing that I would consider to be outside the scope of potential or possibility. And yet healing is very unique. It's a very personal journey. We each go about it in our own unique way. And I could tell you countless stories about people who had various forms of blood sugar issues and no longer do. And on one hand, that's not really fair because it is such a unique process. But the part that I really, really, really want to highlight is sometimes I'll be in conversation, whether email or with a friend, and often the conversation goes to, someone who has a blood sugar issue, to diet, right, to food. And I think all too often, I think our supermarkets, even our quote unquote healthy supermarkets, do us all a serious disservice. And one of the reasons why diabetes and pre-diabetes is in such epidemic proportions is simply because of food, right? I firmly believe that all forms of sugar should be illegal, and some of the artificial sugars, high fructose corn syrup gets an awful lot of press, but there isn't, in my mind, an artificial sugar that should be legal. And a lot of the problems that a lot of people face who have blood sugar issues is all of these products that are manufactured and marketed towards people who are overweight. And there are all these diet products, right? Diet soda, diet everything. And they create massive, massive problems for anyone with blood sugar issues. So, to me, the good news is you don't have to give up sugar. You just have to eat real sugar, right? You have to eat sugar that is, and organic sugar is not what I'm talking about. Like, there is no form of cane sugar that should be consumed by humans, period. And, whether you're at your ideal weight or overweight, whether you have blood sugar issues or not, there are so many really, really good books about sugar. So if this is news to you, which God, I hope it is not, read some of the books. When I was in nutrition school, Sugar Blues was about the only good book, but gosh, that was in the 90s, and these days there are a lot of really, really good books about it. But the important thing to keep in mind is, all of these diet products will kill you. There's no question about it. And part of the challenge is it's a slow burn, right? It's a slowly degrading your body to the point where, your organs, your pancreas will stop functioning, right? So, so I've gone years without eating any kind of any sugar, whether it is what I would characterize to be something that would be healthy and supportive, or the other stuff. And I have so those years, all on one hand, was really helpful. On the other hand, really hard to not feel deprived, and it takes an intense commitment and an intense amount of willpower. So for me, I think life is much, much, much more imbalanced, much more enjoyable. It is truly a sweeter experience when I have good quality sweets that are part of my regular food intake, right? I'm a huge fan of raw foods, live foods specifically, more than raw foods. And in the live food realm of things, there are a lot of people who are making live food desserts from very, very high quality sweeteners, if you will, that would be appropriate for folks who have blood sugar issues. So it definitely takes some research, right? It definitely takes some experimenting. But I think the good news is it doesn't mean that you have to give up, desserts or sweets or things like that. But you do have to give up the junk, right? You do have to stop drinking soda or any soft drink that is sweetened, right? And educate yourself to what sugars would be most helpful for you. I have heard fantastic things about coconut palm sugar. A less refined version of the coconut palm sugar seems to do well for most people. There's a lot of live food information, live food dessert recipes that are available, even here on YouTube. Now, keep in mind, so I ate a live food diet for about 4 years, and it was really frustrating for me because a lot of the folks who are sharing raw food and live food recipes and techniques, because there's a lot of prep, there's a lot that goes into it, they have no idea what they're talking about. They have no clue. They're not experts, and yet they're on YouTube teaching people how how to make and eat live food. So just because it says it's raw food, it's live food, doesn't necessarily mean that person is an expert, and certainly probably not an expert when it comes to blood sugar issues. So do some research, but in the meantime, it does take, there a lot of the books that you could read on sugar will say very clearly that sugar is highly addictive. It's so destructive to so many organs and functions and systems beyond the pancreas. And it is, a lot of researchers are saying it's easier to give up cigarette smoking or heroin use than it is to break the addiction to sugar. So I went through it myself, and it was, an intense and crazy period. And I tried to do it just cold turkey, right? Just no sugar, and that was really, really, really not helpful at all. So do some research into live foods and live food desserts. Study with some experts. There's a lot of really good online courses that are available, but you really have to be sensitive. There are a lot of raw food, live food people who advocate, to me, an excess of fruit, and that will create blood sugar problems if you don't have a blood sugar problem. And if you have a blood sugar problem, it's going to complicate things even further. So, there's no reason why anyone with the right mindset and the right commitment and the willingness to do the work, that if you do have a blood sugar issue, that doesn't have to be part of your lifelong history. So I hope that makes sense. And it's such a gosh, there are things that are being manufactured and sold as quote unquote food that really should be illegal, and the manufacturers, I think, should be prohibited from making it, and maybe even more harsh. There's a lot of really good documentaries these days that do piece all of the pieces together between the food industry and the healthcare industry, and it's not a pretty path to wander down, but it's very, 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 very eye-opening. And part of the challenge is, Michio Kushi, who brought the macrobiotic diet to the West. Michio Kushi said that sugar and these super sweeteners, some super sweeteners that are like 1,000 times more sweet than refined white sugar, he said that those sugars actually pervert our taste buds to the point where if we eat a beet or a carrot, they don't taste sweet anymore. And that's part of the problem with the addiction. And part of the problem with diet soda is it alerts the pancreas that here comes the sugar, and then the sugar's not there. So that then leads to intense sugar cravings. I don't know how often you have seen it, but it's pretty common that I would see someone drinking a diet soda and shortly thereafter eat a candy bar or eat a donut or eat a something that because their body, the craving that the diet product creates has to be satisfied somewhere. It becomes this pretty much an uncontrollable thing. So a lot to think about, and yet I don't want anyone to think that if you're taking source energy medicine, that gives you license to eat anything, and quite the contrary. And more often than not, what I do see with folks who are exploring source energy medicine is as we do transform, especially our subconscious mind, that then making better choices, whether it's related to food or nutrition or exercise or relationships, everything has to change once we transform our subconscious mind, which is the key to transforming our overall energy level. But, even though I don't have any more food allergies, food sensitivities, and no longer suffer, and I could pretty much eat anything that I want, which I couldn't for the longest time, I still eat impeccably well because I understand the relationship between food and everything else in my life, because food affects everything. And if you think it doesn't, you're just not putting the pieces together. But what I eat affects everything from, my mood, my physical energy, mental clarity, sleep, My workouts. Do I have the fuel to actually do a really good, intense workout? It affects everything, everything, everything. Every organ and function in the system is affected, right, by everything that I ingest, food or beverage. So there's an economics to it all, and I often think that everything that I put in my mouth is either going to be making a deposit, right, that I'll have for my short-term and long-term use, or it's making a withdrawal. And at a certain point, I'm going to be going into debt, and at a certain point, the debt's going to get to the point where, there's going to be serious ramifications, and getting out of, that kind of health debt or physical debt is not an easy journey. So much easier to slowly, we all eat 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times a day, and just making the best choices that I can make with every single meal long term is going to be part of it. For me, I see it as part of my health assurance plan. So I hope that makes sense. I'm just going to pause here and scan and see if there are any questions. Thank you for all the emojis and the beautiful comments. Yeah, and if there's anyone who this is your very first SEM Mondays with me live, please type something into the chat so I know that's your experience. I'd love to have the chance to welcome you. Mana says, just from my own experience, I was not able to get a handle on my sugar intake until I got rid of parasites. Using TF3 really helped me recently. That's brilliant and beautiful, and thank you for sharing that, because there are a lot of things that are part of the sugar addiction. There are a lot of things that lead to sugar addiction, right? That create those cravings, those really uncontrollable cravings. And the folks who are making the food stuff are using things other than sugar to help to ensure that you will be back for more other addictive substances. Most food manufacturers have more chemists than they do chefs. So it's kind of scary to think about, but I think it's very empowering to learn to master food, right? Figure it out, because humans are the only species on this planet who can't seem to figure out what to eat for lunch. You don't see a lion wandering around, in the Sahara thinking, whoa, look at that grass. That grass is really mighty appetizing. And look at those leaves on that tree. And there's fruit there too. That looks amazing. And then a gazelle catches their eyes. Like they know what to eat, right? Intuitively. But humans, in part because of our large frontal cortex and our free will, very often our minds, in terms of like what we crave, what we desire, rarely, if ever serves us, unless you're craving things like dark leafy greens, which does happen. It certainly happened to me when I was in transitional diet from standard American diet to eating more of a whole food diet. So, yeah. So I don't see any questions in the chat, and I'm going to start transitioning to this group energy healing session. What I have been doing these last several weeks is inviting you to choose one goal or one challenge that you would like to work on, what you would like to experience during this session. And the reason why I suggest just one is so that it's in, on top of your mind, right, front of your awareness, and it's easiest to see what's happening, right? It's easiest to gain feedback, whereas if you have 4 or 5 or 6 different things, and it's hard to judge what's transforming, what's balancing, and what's restoring. Whereas if you choose one and hold that intention, it's much easier to see feedback. And, keep in mind that even though this will probably be 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, the work will continue to unfold for you. It literally is uploaded, downloaded, and installed into our being. And the positive benefit from this short amount of linear time can last for a significant amount of time. Rewatching the same session is very, very helpful. And the second time, you could choose a different goal or a challenge. And in fact, I encourage you to not use the same one again. So there's a teaching from A Course in Miracles that I always find inspiration in, and the teaching basically states that there is no order of difficulty when it comes to miracles. A lot of people think, well, if I have 6 challenges, I'll start with the easiest one, and according to A Course in Miracles, they're all the same. From my perspective, from a source energy medicine perspective, it's all energy, right? So there's no such thing as, bigger, stronger, more dense energy. It's all energy, and the approach is always the same: to transform, balance, and restore. So if you're not familiar with the non-material aspect of source energy medicine, there's a video on our YouTube channel where I explain it in pretty good detail. When we're done here, you can simply search either in Google or on YouTube, either source energy medicine and energy healing, or source energy medicine non-material aspect. And it's called a non-material aspect because there's no material substance, right? There's no charging labels, there's no water, there's no bottles. So it is purely energy. So you could check out that video. And one that I meant to mention earlier, which I think is one of the most commonly asked questions that I receive, which is essentially, will source energy medicine work for me? Or what can I expect to experience with source energy medicine? And there too, you can search on Google or YouTube for source energy medicine and expectations, and check out that video, because it helps to paint the picture as to why healing is such a unique and different experience for us. For some people, they experience what would be characterized as miraculous in very, 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 very short time. And for others, it could take a year or two, regardless of the methodology. And, I've been curious about that since the mid-90s, and I still remain curious about that. And a lot of my ongoing research is figuring out, in fact, the non-material aspect of source energy medicine came about from my ongoing research, wanting to help people to achieve positive results faster and easier, more directly. Because most folks are, folks who are interested in healing, sometimes their commitment isn't as strong, perhaps, as mine was, because I was willing to do anything at any cost. I didn't care what it tasted like or how horrible or dramatic or cathartic or painful it was, or where I had to travel. If it held some promise, some hope, I was willing to invest significant amounts of time and financial resources and energy into exploring it. So, but I too, one of the it's a blessing and it's a challenge at the same time, in that source energy medicine very intentionally works subtly, right? Works without drama, without catharsis, without healing crisis or healing reaction. Your symptoms don't get worse before they get better. And for me, if before source energy medicine, I had very strong beliefs that healing should be all of those things. It should be painful and difficult and expensive, and had to travel to some far off land and work with some, unique person to be able to have any hope. And now I know that, and if you study A Course in Miracles, is very, very, very clear about miracles are our birthright, and when I am not experiencing a miracle, I'm blocking it in some way, right? I'm creating some kind of resistance that would prevent that miracle from naturally occurring in my life. So I'm fascinated, I remain fascinated by healing, the transformation process, and how we each come to it and go about it. So it's fascinating to me. I think it's important also to mention that in especially within the non-material aspect of source energy medicine, it may look like I am the facilitator or I am the quote-unquote healer. I don't use that term. I don't use that to describe me or really what anyone who is one of our practitioners, because in every my belief is that in every scenario, you are always healing yourself. Yes, most of the time we're working with a professional, we're working with a facilitator, we're working with someone who has expertise in that particular methodology. But in specifically in this case, you are indeed always healing yourself And I am acting more as a guide. I'm acting more as someone who is helping you to remember, helping your, and a lot of it is helping your cells to remember how to function properly, right? Our physiology is designed to be self-balancing, self-healing, and self-correcting. And to a large degree, that's dormant for most of us. It certainly was true for me. And my positive experience since 2005 has been the result of my, in part, having all of that resistance transformed, so that then there was the allowance of really every aspect of my being to be able to be self-balancing, self-healing, and self-correcting. So another teaching from A Course in Miracles that comes to mind every time I talk about this is our role is not to seek love, but to seek that which would prevent me from fully receiving and extending love. And I can apply that teaching to every aspect of source energy medicine. So our role is really not to seek healing, but our role is really to seek, to discover, to learn, to transform the resistance, right? What is it that's keeping my body from being, or whether it's physical or mental or emotional or spiritual or financial or relationships, what's the resistance that's creating the imbalance? What's the resistance that's leading to dis-ease rather than leading to self-balancing, self-healing, and self-correcting? So I'm going to go ahead and segue into this session. On your end, simply relax as much as possible, and please use common sense. If you're driving, or if you're in a place where getting comfortable and closing your eyes is not safe or appropriate, please don't. And just rewatch this when you have time, when you can create some meditative-like space when you can sit or lie down comfortably. It seems, based on feedback, that if you are comfortable closing your eyes, that helps to minimize distractions, which helps to increase the allowance. And that's really what we're looking for, what I'm looking for, what I am shooting for. So continue to breathe naturally and comfortably and simply allow. And if you are a facilitator, if you are someone who helps people with healing, I really encourage you as much as possible to simply allow, have this time be for you, and trust the process, right? You don't have to do anything. You don't have to get in here and help out. Simply allow and trust. For most people, it's quiet, meditative-like space. For me, it always feels like being wrapped in a warm blanket of unconditional love. I always feel uplifted anytime, whether I'm facilitating or on the receiving end of a session. And as I mentioned, the work is super fast, so 5 or 7 minutes. I'll put up a title slide, and there'll be some chanting in the background, just in case folks join us late. They realize that we are indeed broadcasting. Something is going on here on SEM Mondays. And then when we wrap up, I'll invite you to take a nice deep breath and come back, and if anyone's willing to share what your experience was like, always, I mean, that to me is the most important part. I'm always most interested in what you experience. I'm always most interested in something that's tangible, something that's measurable, something that we can pinpoint in terms of feedback. And then I'll check the chat thread for any questions that have come in while I was setting this up, and then we will say bye for now and go back about our business. So I'm going to go ahead and get set up here and invite you to take a nice deep breath and simply allow, simply receive. As much as possible, trust in the divine orchestration that led to this very moment, that led to this experience. And try and see this goal or this challenge, this one thing that you would like to experience today. Try and see it from the end. Try and see it from the place of full manifestation, of full realization. As much as possible, know that you indeed are worthy, that you deserve. And often to get to that place, I like to switch from my body's eyes to the perspective of the source of all creation. How does the source of all creation see me? And from my perspective, the source of all creation sees each of us as whole, perfect, complete, divine, eternal beings, completely connected to the source of all creation and completely connected to everyone and everything, every sentient being on this planet. Continue to breathe comfortably. Continue to allow. Continue to receive. take a nice deep breath. And if your eyes are closed, slowly blink your eyes open. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Continue to breathe naturally and comfortably. And when you're ready, come on back to us live here on YouTube. You know, it's interesting to me in that, you know, we've been doing these mini group source energy medicine sessions every Monday for quite some time now. And, you know, on one hand, you can watch the replay of any of them and choose your particular intention. And yet each one is unique, each one is different, and each one for me is often hard to pinpoint. Why is this one different than another's? And it has to do with everyone who will ever experience this particular group, non-material source energy medicine, for example. And you know, if you think about it, time is an illusion. You know, Einstein believed that time was an illusion of consciousness. And so if you think about it, someone could watch this or experience this group energy healing session 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and in a sense, they're experiencing it now, and in a sense, we're experiencing the positive benefit of the expansion of this morphic field. So I talk about this a lot inside of our online workshops, especially in the non-material aspect of source energy medicine, because to a large degree, we take advantage of that illusion of time, and we use that illusion to our huge advantage. Very often when I'm working one-on-one with a client, and when I get to the part where we're working on a challenge, I'll ask, where is the most ideal place in linear time to work on that challenge? And more often than not, it's in the past, and very often it's when the client was in utero. So we're able to do things with a non-material aspect that we can't do with charging labels, right? With charging labels, we're working in this moment in this time-space reality. So certainly, I think believing that time is an illusion of consciousness helps. And there are certainly things that you can do. You can visualize as you drink source energy medicine to be in that ideal time for it to have its maximal benefit. But each one of these sessions has its own unique morphic field, and that's why each one is different. And the more sensitive you are, the more you'll notice the difference between them. There are some folks who, in the special masterclass that we produced a couple of months ago, specifically to support folks with the COVID-19 crisis, it goes way beyond that. It's really a masterclass that's about acute conditions. How do we deal with acute conditions? And there were group non-material source energy medicine sessions as part of that. And there were a lot of participants in that who experienced each of those back to back, and there are more now, but there were 4 that were part of the main master class. And not only did they notice a difference between each of them, but a cumulative effect of experiencing them in a sequential manner. So I invite you to get creative. I mean, you could watch. You don't have to watch the whole replay from SEM Mondays to be able to benefit from the energy healing. Just fast forward to the part where we do that. I won't be offended. So it really is, the only limits to what's possible would be rooted in your beliefs, right? Whether it's a conscious or an unconscious or a subconscious belief that would be resistance, right? That would not allow. So if you get creative, if you're willing to explore, if you're willing to play a little bit, the thing that I love about source energy medicine, whether it's charging labels or non-material aspect, the worst thing that can happen is nothing. And the best thing that can happen would be, nothing short of what would be considered a blessing or a miracle. So my encouragement is to develop that sensitivity, develop in part your experience is going to be different based on what your goal or challenge is, and the space where you experience it, right? How much distraction is there or is there not? So There was a question from Susie, which I saw just was coming back. And Susie asks, which source energy medicine is best for bees in my bird bath? I have your special bee labels. So, a couple of things. So, for specifically to help bees, there are species-specific source energy medicine charging labels for several, right? There are for horses and cats and dogs and llamas and alpacas and honeybees. I think I can't remember if there's a video on our YouTube channel about the apis, about the honeybees. But I offer them. I offer those. So the cats and horses, dogs. Those species-specific charging labels are available to purchase on our website, source-energy-medicine.com. Click the shop link to purchase any of those. The ones for bees I offer for free, because the bees play such a vital role in our crops, right? Propagating of our crops, pollinating, propagating. So if you do use the apis source energy medicine charging labels, which are for honeybees, and you do put it in a bird bath, make sure you put some rocks and sticks and things, because because bees are not good swimmers and they will drown. So make sure that you have some safety for them to be able to land comfortably. And the ones that I would use would be the Transformation Fusion number 3 for bees, apis, and ELP Fusion number 1. Those are the two that actually will help bees the most. And and not only help bees, but any birds or squirrels or any wildlife that would drink out of that, that basin would benefit as well. It's not like the TF3 will only work for bees. TF3 has everything in it as the humans, and then some very specific additional information that's just for bees. And the same is true for the ones for dogs and horses and cats and llamas and alpacas. So I do believe that there's a video on our YouTube channel where I talk about the species-specific source energy medicine charging labels and why we have them, and that whole story, far more than what I could get into here today. But that is, even if you just have a balcony or a windowsill where you can put out a small dish safely, where it's not going to potentially fall on anyone, or if you have a garden, any kind of outdoor space, just put I like to use an old pie plate or something like that, and change the water frequently. Put a blank charging label on it, whether it's transparent or not. It might be helpful, might not be helpful, but if you're changing the water frequently, there's really not a whole lot to be concerned about. I was talking a couple of weeks ago about our hummingbird feeders, and I have charging labels on our hummingbird feeders in there too. I have TF3 for humans, and I have ELP Fusion number 1, and I have 3 feeders. I have good spots for 3 feeders, but I have 4 feeders, and I will put in early on in the season, I'll put ELP Fusion number 1 out in 2 feeders and TF3 in 1 feeder. And if the TF3 feeder empties faster, then I'll put 2 of those out, because if you look at the Source Energy Medicine People's Desk reference, you'll see that TF3 is a combination of virus and bacteria and fungus and mold and parasites and everything that can contribute to challenge. Stress and residue are big things for animals. So TF3 is a massive gift for all of us. Animals are more sensitive than humans for the most part. I'm sure there are exceptions to that. But bees seem to be very, like thousands of times more sensitive to a lot of things that most humans are not even aware of, especially things like toxins and EMFs, right? Electromagnetic fields. So I hope that's helpful, Susie, and bless you for thinking of our bees and our birds and wildlife. But it's I've heard stories from people, some who live in urban areas, right? I've heard this story in New York City. I've heard this story in Toronto. where they, folks do have a little bit of outdoor space, and they'll put an old baking dish or ceramic saucer from a plant works really well, and they'll put a stick and a rock and put some of the TF3 in there, and the bees find it. And these are folks that they can't remember seeing bees out on their terrace before, and the bees will find it. There's no question about it, even in New York City or Toronto, which is a beautiful indicator that they're way smarter than most of us are. So, yeah, let me just see if there are any last minute questions, because I do indeed have to skedaddle here. Nancy shares magnificent. Thank you, Stephen. Was in the place of pure potentiality. That is awesome, Nancy, and bless you for receiving that so well. Amana says, great healing. Felt myself being lifted up, looking down, feeling very calm, and like, oh, all that stuff down there, there is so unimportant. It's interesting. That's cool to have that separation and that perspective. I love that. That's really, really cool. And kind of goes to, I'm reminded of the comments that I shared. Try and see yourself not so much with your body's eyes, but try and see yourself the way the source of all creation sees you. And I think the source of all creation does not get distracted by the things that seem to be problematic to most of us humans. So Julie Ann shares the meditation helped be more relaxed and more focused. The message of allowance really came home for me. That is such a big thing, Julianne, that a lot of folks don't get. Like, I don't know of any other healing methodology where they really talk about allowance. And if they do, it's in a very different way than the way we talk about it. And resistance and allowance are definitely two sides of the same coin, if you will. And yet they're not complementary, right? They're not reciprocal. Simply transforming resistance doesn't ensure an increase of allowance. So, it's interesting. It's also interesting to look at, I can allow on different levels, and having conscious allowance helps to increase the subtle versions of allowance that I'm less aware of, right? The allowance that's happening on a subconscious and unconscious level. So, certainly between now and next Monday, keep in touch. And gosh, if you don't know about our free mini course in Source Energy Medicine, it's known as the Quick Start Guide. I always include a link in the description below all of the SEM Mondays content, and registration remains open for our special emergency masterclass. Again, that content is going to help you for the rest of your life. It's not just to support you getting through COVID-19, which in and of itself is a massive blessing, but it helps me to understand not only why I could possibly ever get sick. Acute conditions are often described as sudden and rapid onset. So things like vomiting, diarrhea, nausea, intense headaches, sleeplessness, things like that, where it's not a common thing, right? It's not someone who's often sleepless or having difficulty getting to sleep, but this one, out of the blue kind of thing, which is often the way acute conditions are described. So registration remains open to that, and anything else that you have questions about, difficulty finding, or anything, we have live chat available on most of our pages. It's on our website. It's in our SEMonlinecourses.com, which is where the free mini course and all of our online workshops is hosted. And Milo, the amazing Milo, the man that I am super duper grateful for, does most of our live chat. And he's not only like a really, really friendly, approachable, nice guy, but he's and technically genius, but he's passionate about helping folks, and he's super passionate about source energy medicine. It's just such he is such a gift to me and everyone in our community who has ever interacted with him. I get so many wonderful emails from people who just sing his praises, and I try and sing his praises as often as possible. So I would not want to think about what my life would be like without his ongoing love and support. So As always, I wish you continued blessings on your journey with Source Energy Medicine. Bye for now.